Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going all the way back to 1978 for Let's Talk About Halloween. That's right, even though we've just reviewed the most recent Halloween movie that just came out a couple of weeks ago, we're now going from the end all the way back to the beginning of this saga with the original 1978 movie, which I've now seen. So let's get straight into it. By now we all know how it starts. It starts with a first person POV shot of 6-year-old Michael Myers looking at his sister Judith making out with her boyfriend, whose name in the credits is literally boyfriend. The guy doesn't even get they didn't even come up with an actual name for him. So Michael spies on his sister making out with her boyfriend before the two of them go upstairs. Michael slowly makes his way into the house, picks up a knife, his trusty kitchen knife of course, and then the boyfriend leaves the house and we never see him again. Michael makes his way upstairs into his sister's room, puts on a clown mask, and we all know what happens next. Starts going to town on her with that knife, killing her. Then leaves out the front door as his parents return home, unmasking him, and he just stands there holding the knife. That was Halloween night 1963. Then we fast forward to Halloween Eve 1978, where we meet our protagonist and horror's most iconic final girl, Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. She and her two friends Annie and Linda are talking about what they're going to be doing for Halloween after Laurie has been in school, looking outside the window and seeing a strange man in a mask and blue overalls looking at her from across the street. That man, of course, is Michael Myers, who had escaped Smith's Grove the night before, along with all the other inmates, which is, again, probably one of the most iconic scenes in horror history. So iconic that in Halloween 2018, they literally recreated that same scene because of how impactful it was. So Dr. Sam Loomis, played by the late Donald Pleasence, is with nurse Marion Chambers, as they're taking Michael from Smith's Grove to somewhere else. Unfortunately, the gate shuts, so as Dr. Loomis goes out to open the gate, Michael attacks the nurse Chambers. He doesn't manage to kill her, but she gets out of the car, Michael gets in, and heads his way down to Haddonfield. The following morning, Dr. Loomis was talking to another doctor who we see one more time in the movie, telling Dr. Loomis how could he have escaped? He can't drive, and Dr. Loomis says he was doing very well last night. Honestly, Donald Pleasence in the Halloween movies is so great. It's so sad that he passed away 27 years ago now, back in 1995, just before The Curse of Michael Myers was released, which was the last movie role he ever did. And he never even got to see the movie, although considering it's a lot of people's least favourite Halloween movie, maybe that's a good thing. So Michael arrives in Haddonfield after killing a mechanic to get his overalls. Why is it a trend in horror where some of the most iconic clothing pieces for the killers are gotten in such unimaginative ways? Jason got his hockey mask from some annoying guy in Friday Part 3. Michael got his overalls for some random mechanic. At least they show us him killing the mechanic in Halloween 2018 when he gets his overalls in that movie. At least they show us him killing the mechanic this time. They didn't even show us that. So Michael breaks into a hardware store selling Halloween masks and all sorts of Halloween stuff. Michael takes a rope, some knives, and a mask. Now, we know what the knives are for, we know what the mask is for, but at the time, no one knew what the rope was for. And then we found out later, in the 1978 flashbacks of Halloween Kills, now they finally show us what Michael got the rope for. It was to kill one of the other officers that arrived right after the original movie ended. So Laurie is babysitting this kid called Tommy Doyle, and Annie is supposed to be babysitting this little girl called Lindsay Wallace, who, of course, you may remember, was in Halloween Ends and was one of the sole survivors of the original, just like Laurie. So Annie wants to get on with it with her boyfriend, but she's babysitting. So what she does later on is she gets Lindsay over to the Tommy Doyle's house, and Laurie babysits both of them. So far, Michael has only killed one person, his sister. He hasn't really done anything. But the thing about this movie is, because it's the original, it makes sense why Michael isn't around that much until near the end. Because you don't really know anything about him yet. You just keep seeing him in the shadows, such as in a scene where Laurie puts the keys to the Myers house under a mat. Michael is already inside the house, and you can see him appear from the shadows. So when it gets to night time of Halloween night, Dr. Loomis tells one of the police officers to be very wary, because Haddonfield will be under attack soon from the boogeyman. Much earlier in the movie, some kids that were bullying Tommy Doyle literally said the boogeyman's gonna get you. It's funny because that eventually did happen. Sure, it took another 43 years to Halloween Kills, but it did happen. Tommy Doyle was killed by Michael Myers. It just took a lot longer than those kids were probably expecting. So Dr. Loomis wants to keep watch around the old Myers house because he knows Michael will be around. He even goes inside with one of the police officers. And he finds a dead dog. A dead, slightly eaten dog, yes. For some reason, in Halloween, Michael Myers doesn't just kill dogs. Sometimes he eats them as well. He kills a total of 2 dogs in this movie, that one, and he kills the dog of Lindsay's house by choking it out, and they actually show us him doing that, although they only show the bottom half of the dog in that scene. They don't actually show Michael's hands crushing the dog's throat. So Annie has been prank calling Laurie the whole time. So when Annie decides she's going to head off to meet up with her boyfriend Paul, she gets into the car. She tries to open up the car door and realizes, keys. She goes back, gets the keys, opens the door without realizing she didn't use the keys to open the door, meaning the car had been unlocked by someone else. As she gets in, she's ready to set off. And who do you who's in the back seat ready to strangle her to death? Good old Michael Myers. Michael finally gets his second kill of the movie as he appears from the back seat and starts strangling Annie. And she keeps honking the horn to try and get someone's attention. So Michael's like, okay, if you're going to keep doing that, whips out another knife and slits her throat and gets it done quickly. Then, after killing Annie, he walks back into the house, back into the Wallace's house, holding Annie, and Tommy Doyle happens to see Michael doing that. And he's already said before this point to Laurie that the boogeyman is outside. But Laurie doesn't believe him. The only person that does believe him is Lindsay. But that might be because she had spent up until switching from her own house to the Doyle's house, she'd been watching the original version of The Thing, which of course John Carpenter, the director of this movie and the composer of Halloween's iconic score, he also directed the 1982 version of The Thing, which came out just 1 year after the original Halloween 2. So Michael kills Annie, then he sets his sights next on Linda, Laurie's other friend, and her boyfriend Bob. So the two of them, so Linda and Bob have a you-know-what scene, if you know what I mean. After that, Bob goes down to the kitchen to get a beer, which is what Linda asked him to do. He hears a noise, opens the door, and Michael does his iconic appear out of nowhere, grab hold of person, pin them up against the wall, stab them with a knife, and have the knife hold them up just slightly above the ground. And of course, that was Michael's very first head tilt kill, which of course is such an iconic thing that he even did it in Halloween Ends. Pinning up against the wall and then doing the head tilt, that's Michael's signature kill. After that, he makes his way upstairs, puts on a... You know when people put like cloths over them to pretend they're ghosts? He does that and puts Bob's glasses on top of the ghost cloth. Linda flashes him. I think you all know what that means. Not realising that it's not Bob, it's actually Michael. So she goes to call Laurie on the phone, and Michael uses the phone cord to strangle and kill Linda. So now he's killed. So now Michael has killed 3 people. He's killed Annie, Bob, and Linda. And Judith, if we're counting when he was a kid. So Laurie goes to investigate, and she finally runs into Michael Myers for the very first time. And this is what I meant by in Halloween Ends. I got those two mixed up quite a lot in that video. In Halloween Ends, this is what I meant by this is the first time Laurie and Michael had ever actually properly faced each other. Because in the original, they don't face each other. Laurie simply runs away from Michael. I mean, the first time they meet is Michael slashing at Laurie's arm and makes her fall down the stairs. So she runs back to the Doyle's house, trying to keep Lindsay and Tommy safe while Michael is very, very slowly making his way to the house. He finally gets there, starts attacking Laurie. He doesn't manage to stab her again. Instead, Laurie manages to stab him with a knitting needle that, after he missed a stab with his knife, but that only knocks him down momentarily, as he gets straight back up to chase her down again. So she runs into one of the bedrooms, hides in the wardrobe, which is another very iconic scene in the movie, where Michael breaks his way into the wardrobe and Laurie stabs him in the eye with a coat hanger. Laurie then tells Tommy and Lindsay to get the hell out, go to the Mackenzie's house, and call the cops. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis has finally clocked that Michael's already here because he's seen the car that Michael stole the previous night. And when he sees Lindsay and Tommy running away, screaming, he's like, "Well, I know where Michael is." Makes his way into the house. As Laurie thinks she's got Michael, then he appears again and starts strangling her, but she unmasks him to show, very briefly, Nick Castle's face. So when Michael puts his mask back on and Laurie runs away, Dr. Loomis shows up, shoots him 6 times, which he mentions at least 3 times in Halloween 2. And Michael falls off the balcony. But when they go to look down, Michael has disappeared. Where did he go? Well, back then, when the original first came out, nobody knew, but thanks to the Halloween Kills flashbacks, we know exactly what happened. Michael made his way down the street, and then had Officer Hawkins kill one of his own police mates, while Michael was strangling him with the rope that he'd gotten earlier, which we finally found out what that rope was used for, since he didn't use it at any point in the actual original movie. So, Halloween, the original, 1978, what did I think? Well, I thought it was definitely the best Halloween movie I've watched so far, but that's not saying much considering the only other 2 I've watched are Kills and Ends, the most recent 2. But yeah, it makes perfect sense why this movie is known to be iconic as it is. The music in this movie really sets the atmosphere. Michael not doing much up until over halfway through doesn't bother me this time the way it bothered me in Halloween Ends, because in Ends you expect Michael to be there all the time. In this movie you wouldn't expect him to be there because you had no idea what was going to happen. I wonder if anyone else has ever reviewed the original Halloween after reviewing Halloween Ends, or am I the first person to ever do that? But there was one specific scene in the movie that didn't make any sense. You know the iconic scene of Laurie looking out of her bedroom window, seeing Michael standing amongst the bed sheets on the washing line? Laurie's still looking at Michael, doesn't turn away, doesn't stop looking, and then he disappears, and she suddenly doesn't know where he is, even though she never stopped looking directly at him. That's the only scene that makes literally no sense. But overall, Halloween, the original, 1978, great movie. Definitely, it's very easy to see why it's most people's favourite Halloween movie. And my final rating for Halloween, the original from 1978, is an 8.8 out of 10. Really damn good movie. And kicked off, and that, of course, Halloween popularised the slasher subgenre of horror. That movie is what got it going. So thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, tell me if you've watched the original Halloween and do you think it's as good as I do, or do you think it's even better, or maybe worse than I do? Please tell me in the comments. And until next time, catch you later.